Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Dato Muhammad Daud Bakar, President of IIUM, and Sri Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, Director of IIUM, Professor UMC members, okay, deans, directors, okay, brothers and sisters. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to a Festschrift in honor of Almarhum Professor Malik Badri. A Festschrift is essentially a book honoring a respected person to be given during his lifetime. But in today's case, we are honoring a very respected person, Almarhum Prof. Malik Badri, Professor Emeritus, given by University in Sudan, organized by the Department of Psychology and the Office of Knowledge for Change and Advancement. This event, in a way, is a pre-Festschrift in that the papers presented today will form the backbone of a forthcoming book in his honor, and also a post-Festschrift in that this should have been done during his lifetime. But inshallah, as we listen to today's talk, we will not only learn, but we will continue to make dua for him.
Inshallah.
This is actually the latest in a series of Murabbi related programs organized by the Office of Knowledge for Change and Advancement. We have the Murabbi Talk series, of which Prof. Kamal and Daud have been one of the speakers. We have the Murabbi in Action series. This is a series of talk highlighting the things that are being done by the lecturers today, the Murabbi in Action. And the latest here today is the Murabbi in Memoriam, or honoring a Murabbi series. For this particular series, for today's series, okay, or for the honoring a Murabbi series, the program is to be co-organized with the relevant department. And for today's event, the main organizer is the Department of Psychology, where Almarhum Professor Malik Badri was mainly attached to during his time in IIUM. To begin the event, I would like to invite Brother Syed Ahmad Muhajir Al-Haddad to recite the opening dua. Tafadhal mashkuran.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala al-ashrafil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma innaka khallaqul azim, innaka sami'un alim, innaka ghafurur rahim, innaka rabbul arshil azim. Rabbana alayka tawakkalna wa ilayka anabna wa ilaykal masir. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azaban nar. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
الله منكم.
Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. Okay. Almarhum Prof. Malik Badri was an international figure, but he was also the spiritual and intellectual father in the Department of Psychology. This celebration, for as we continue to miss him, this is a celebration of his contributions of his life. I have the pleasure to invite the head of the Department of Psychology, Dr. Nazaria Shari Janun, to give the opening remarks. Tafadhali mashkur.
Thank you, Dr. Lihanna Borhan. A very good morning and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Respected speakers, Datuk Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Kamal Hassan, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, ladies and gentlemen, the respected audience. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Festschrift in honor of Almarhum Professor Malik Badri. The event is organized to acknowledge Almarhum Professor Malik Badri's extraordinary contribution in initiating and advancing the Islamization of psychological research, education, and psychotherapy. As society experience an increased cases of psychological problem and Western perspective fail to save the world population from the problems, Almarhum has taken proactive action to introduce the understanding of human behavior from Islamic perspective without fear of being rejected by the Western psychologists. Let us together continue his journey. We shall use all our competence and expertise to effectively continue the process of Islamization of psychology. I am also recording my heartfelt gratitude to the organizing committee of the event for their dedication, time, and effort in ensuring the success of this event. For all esteemed speakers, my utmost appreciation for your expert contribution in this important event that further strengthening our understanding in the Islamization of knowledge, particularly Islamization of psychology. Thank you for your presence and participation in this event. May we have profitable and worthwhile academic input throughout the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nazaria. The Office of Communication, Advocacy and Promotion has kindly put together a short montage of Almarhum Prof. Malik with the feed that the department gave him. Okay, so as we watch, please continue to make dua for him. Al-Fatiha. Okay, and now we are in the main part of the Festschrift, which are the talks from these 4 very esteemed speakers. Okay. Prof. Malik's impact to the world was not via his administrative post, but his thinking. Who better to analyze his thinking process than someone who is a very forward-looking thinker himself, and who we are also very blessed to have as our president. IIUM is very blessed to have as our president. May I invite Dato Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar to present his talk titled Algorithm of Thought, the Case Study of Malik Badri. Tafadhal, shukran Dato.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah alladhi bi ni'matihi tatimmu shalihat. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyil huda war rahmah. Amma ba'd. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Lihanna Borhan, the moderator for this great event to honor the great men among the humanity. Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dzulkifli Razak, the Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Kamal Hassan, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, the head of department, distinguished participant, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, summa alhamdulillah, we are gathering this morning, in this blessed morning, to spend some time of our thought and our reflection for honoring the memory of the late Almarhum Professor Malik Badri Muhammad. He is no doubt a great man in many dimensions. It would be very difficult to cover the entire dimension and perspective and the bandwidth of this great man. What more of his great thinking and thought? And this is something, a very big task for me to say a few words in this important session. As much as I am delighted to be invited to speak in this session, I feel a bit reluctant, a bit perplexed to talk about someone, about his book in particular, which I have not read all his books from cover to cover. So this is a great challenge for me. Perhaps so happen I'm the president of the university, so the community, the fraternity of the university has asked me to say a few words. I think in that context, I am motivated and to take the challenge and to understand and try to understand the thinking process, the algorithm of the late Almarhum Professor Malik Badri. In so doing, I might, have overlooked some aspects which are not that feasible to me, which is quite normal and natural in our understanding. But I took the courage and the liberty to say, outright what I have, discovered and what I have personally and intuitively, if you like, felt about this great man and his great thought altogether. Before I proceed further, I would like to start my remark by saying that Professor Malik Badri is a personality of rare breakthrough. And his breakthrough came about from his mindset. So the catalyst that transformed him to become what he has become in the last 90 years, almost 90 years of his life on this planet, is about his mindset, a very structured mindset, a very, if you like, courageous mindset to think for himself and to think for his ummah, and to take all the challenges intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, to print out and to leave behind a legacy of a very strong mindset. First and foremost, he's not only a psychologist, he is a clinical psychologist. Not many intellectuals in the Islamic world who can combine the theory and the practice. And what more, in the case of Prof. Malik Badri, he is a certified clinical psychologist. And this is would come on the top of his CV. He walked the talk perhaps, and he walked the walk to a large extent. We have heard a lot, and we have no doubt that he is the father of Islamic psychology in the modern time. And this is something that we have to continue talking about that and try to create the Malik Badri, the junior, in the process. Because as human, we are given the time frame to live on this planet and to contribute the most we could, but we need to think about the succession planning all the way. The Great Ummah is always about putting the right succession planning for the young people, for the new people, for the new talent to come forward and to take the leadership role and to become better and more impactful compared to the older and the earlier generation. And this is our job basically. The Ummah needs new Malik Badri across the globe. And he is known for his deep contemplation and understanding. He thinks 100,000 times before he speaks. And this reflects his ability to use his cognitive understanding. He talked about cognitive behavioral therapy all the time, but he's a man of cognitive to start off. Not literalist, not the critical thinking, but he can go deeper than critical thinking to be a cognitive, aware of the social, historical, human and dimension of every words, every sentence, and every theory of knowledge. And being cognitive is not that easy. Quran is the document full of a cognitive dimension, whereas our ummah, even in our study in the university, our students are rarely taught to be cognitive in their understanding. And somehow Prof. Malik Badri has talked about cognitive understanding and appreciation, of course, in relation to his psychological understanding, but in our case, we need to transform that into our own cognitive curricula and syllabus across the discipline from law, economics, human sciences, even to hard sciences. Everything has the cognitive element of understanding. He is also an ummatic and global traveler. He traveled a lot, and this has made him very much not Sudanese, not an Arab, not a European. He belonged to the whole world, and the world mindset is very much needed nowadays as we live in the in the no boundaries, that kind of environment. And the last but not least, of his personality, of what I call the rare breakthrough, his cognitive skill set and ability to understand any issue down and multi-level and multi-dimension. And this is something we owe him a lot. And Imam Shafi'i has started in Risalah about the cognitive interpretation, followed by Al-Jassas, followed by Al-Tabari, followed by Al-Alusi in his Tafsir Al-Alusi, Ruh Ma'ani, sorry about that, and so on. So, but we need to continue the tradition of cognitive understanding and interpretation of everything we do or plan to do. He has written many books. You have read, some of you have read all of them. I've not read all of them. I've not even finished reading any particular book, but I have referred to his book from time to time for my own research purposes. But after this session, it gave me all the motivation to read through and to understand the very jewels and the insights of his deep thought and understanding of behavioral, human behavioral or social behavioral behavior of human being. What I have learned basically in the last few years, and particularly when we heard about his demise, I started Googling and started reading some of his book, which I'm able to put my hand on. I have learned a few things, if I may share some of the thought I have about his algorithm of thinking process. First and foremost, he is very much courageous to be contrarian. He's very much ready, keen, and took the pride to be the first to say something new in his own world of expertise and knowledge. Of course, during that time and still until today, the Freudian or the Sigmund Freud, hypothesis and thesis and contention are still prevailing in our modern time. Of course, he has analyzed, he has rebutted the few ideas of Sigmund Freud, sexual impulses, and in my own research on Maqasid al-Shari'ah, I have discovered somewhere, somehow, the elements of the whole Western civilization as we speak is based on these two fundamental Freudian theory, which is sexual motivation and the thinking of animosity, the rivalry. For you to become a winner, you have to be powerful, you have to be mighty, because only the mighty can control the world. That's why all the movies produced by Hollywood are very much about one script. You have to be stronger, you have to be powerful, you have to be hostile, you have to be aggressive, you have to be weapon up to the teeth for you to take control of the world. And the whole idea of segment for the last 300 years have come in and influence the thinking process of the universities, of the industry in the West, even to some extent in the East. So these are the two pillars of the Sigmund Freud theory of psychology. We have seen the movement in the West to before even Malik Badri in early 20s and 1930 and 40s about the school of empathy to balance the idea of Sigmund Freud. And the empathy is a word which we need to study a lot more in our research. Perhaps the empathy was not highlighted in our Islamic tradition. We need to bring back, though the Quran has mentioned clearly in the beautiful ayah describing the Prophet Muhammad SAW as harisun, which is very much of empathic personality. But the word haris has not been analyzed thoroughly and collectively in our Islamic world, which is quite unfortunate. But we have the time to do the catch-up game, and we have to take every single verse of the Quran cognitively. And this is the missing link. That's why I have to put the credit to all his writing, Prof. Malik Badri writing about cognitive interpretation and understanding. And from that perspective, you have heard in the modern world of management, they call about red ocean and the blue ocean. And sometimes we are very, very excited about blue ocean. We thought blue ocean is the way forward. That's good. Rather than competing in the same market, we need to create new market and becoming blue in our perspective. But blue does not mean good in our Islamic perspective. Perhaps a scholar in Thailand has invented a theory called wide ocean, which is a good theory, win-win situation. So this is the method that we need to open up our mind and learn even from non-Muslim, even from those who don't subscribe to our ideology, because sometimes Allah will throw the hikmah in the minds of his creature, whoever they are. So this is the first thing about him that I have learned, courageous to be contrarian. Sometimes it's good to be contrarian for a reason. Many people, they wanted to be contrarian for no reason. And this is not a welcome attitude in our society. And when he has a reason, or when he had a reason, he has continuously be consistent on putting his argument all the way until he was called by his creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Almighty. So this is, the whole idea of becoming courageous and to be contrary for a good reason. Of course, what I have learned also from reading his book and understanding his personality, he is very much a practitioner more than a theorist. It's easy to create thousands of theories, thousands of thinkers, but we need one or two powerful practitioners among the theorists. And this is our job at the university and beyond the university, in the industry, to bring the theory to the practitioner and bring the practice to the theorists. And this will complement and make the whole equation complete. Third element, he is known for his deep thinking before writing. In fact, if you have, I have enjoyed reading in the last few days, his book about contemplation, and he has made a very interesting distinguishing element between the meditation and contemplation. Many of our Muslim even tend to take the Quran and the Sunnah as part of meditation and never took the Quran and the Sunnah as the material for transformation of mindset, to think seriously and to be involved in deep thinking and contemplation to transform. Meditation does not transform the Muslim. Meditation plus contemplation would transform the Muslim. And he has emphasized that point over and over and over, and that could also be attributed to the dilemma of the Muslim in the 21st century and before that, and perhaps in the future. We are good in something spiritual, but we are not, we do want to be good and strong in the case of mindset and thinking process, and becoming an influential thinker and game changer in the society. We wanted to change ourselves, but we do want to change the society. Islam was revealed to change the society, and within that process, individuals should be transformed as well. The fourth element, I have observed that his level of analysis and understanding and insights are too many layers. He went down to many levels of understanding and query and question and putting the right and the valid and legitimate question before he can arrive at the intended answer and respond, if you like. And this is very much in line with the interesting and beautiful ayah in the Quran, yu'til hikmata man yasha wa man yu'tal hikmata faqad utiya khairan kathira wa ma yazakkaru illa ulul albab. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant the hikmah. Again, the word hikmah until today cannot be translated into one word or even two words or even few words. This is something we need to have the cognitive machine, perhaps, to really put the right meaning of the word hikmah. Having said that, perhaps we can call it wisdom, we can call it collective insight, we can call it the inner feeling which is guided by Allah Almighty, which is very much distinctive from the normal knowledge, al-hikmah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant hikmah to those He wishes, and whoever is granted the hikmah, he will definitely given and granted a lot of good things in his life, in his thinking process, in his publication, and in his social duties toward the ummah. And those only those who are using the mind for contemplation is able to be granted this kind of hikmah. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا الْأُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. This in my own interpretation, I would relate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has indicated the hikmah will only be given, will only be granted to those who are using their mind to think critically. The last segment of my presentation, my personal insights about his book, some of his book, to be honest, not all of his book. First, any book for that matter, written by anyone, no matter how good and comprehensive it has been, doesn't command the finality and the pinnacle of knowledge. So we have to honor him, we have to give him the right attribute, but that shouldn't stop our students and our scholars and our thinkers in the society to take his idea forward and to be able to complete what he has not perhaps done in the past. And this is the tradition of knowledge. The new generation will make the knowledge more, the imperfect knowledge perfect, and the perfect knowledge more impactful in the society. So this is the whole value chain of knowledge. And I hope the university can take a very serious effort to create the second echelon, the second generation of Professor Malik Badri, to take one chapter or one book of his publication to digest it, to analyze it, and to bring it to another level with the proper formula, theory, maxim, and in fact to convert that into a very new modern of theory, even using the big data and AI, which is quite interesting because he has provided a lot of data, and this data cannot be left up to the emotion to translate, which is good, but also for the smart technology to give the meaning and insight based on the data of whatever depression, anger, the issue of fear, using the data of the society in the last how many years, and the current time, and in the future. So this is something I would like to appeal to my colleagues and friends among the fraternity to really take his books further. Second, I have highlighted just now indirectly to use the new technology, the tech, to understand better and to rediscover things that he has not discovered in the past. I think this is something we need to do. I have been using my own smart machine on the Quran. I have discovered so many things that the normal mind cannot do that, because to deal with thousands and millions of data of the community, to map again the data of the Quran, we need to connect, and we need to find the connector, and the connector is the smart machine. The way of contemplation of Malik Badri Muhammad, MBBM, must be clinically studied, analyzed, benchmarked, and transformed into theories, into new ideation, moving forward to understand the psychological disorders or motivation in the society, anxiety, fear, hope, the issue of materialism and secularism, and so on and so forth. So this is my hope, that we need to devote a lot of resources, financial or otherwise, to make his theory very much trendy, fashionable, and useful and impactful. And my last comment, I have my own personal interest. I started writing my own book since 2016, entitled The Psyche of the Muslim Mufti and Jurisconsult, or the Muslim jurist in general. I was writing halfway through, and I stuck because I didn't know how to analyze the psyche of the Muslim the current Muslim, I'm not referring to the past, but the current one in my own fraternity, obviously finance, but I was not sure how to move forward. I observed it, I have seen it, I knew it because due to my practice in the market for the last 20 years also, I know something is moving in the mind of Scholar A, Scholar B, and Scholar C across the globe. I know the psyche of each of one, but I need to substantiate it with a proper clinical or perhaps theory of psychology. Alhamdulillah, I started reading thoroughly all of the books of Professor Malik Badri for me to complete what I have started. I have gone through. It's a long journey, about 200 pages already. So I need to put the flavor of an Islamic psychology to understand more of psyche. Because for me, in this world, if I may end my speech, we have only two things that dictate the life, the knowledge and the psyche. Sometimes they are congruent, they are harmonious to each other, but sometimes the knowledge is much more powerful than psyche, which is good, but sometimes which is bad when the psyche overrule the knowledge and the data of life. I think with that, I would like to thank the organizing committee for having me this morning. I'm not the expert, I'm the least expert among all the three other great speakers and presenters. I'm giving my own thought from my own experience dealing with so many communities around the globe, Muslim, non-Muslim scholars, and the normal men on the street. But I hope I have given some of the useful input. I hope I can be the student of Professor Malik Badri forever to absorb the insight and the cognitive understanding of the psychology and what more of Islam in my career of understanding Islam and understanding the sources of Islam, the Quran and Sunnah, using the cognitive interpretation. Thank you very much, Sir Professor Dr. Lihanna, and thank you all the speakers, and thank you all the participants. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the soul of our father, our Murabbi, our educator. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dato. So we look forward to reading that book. Inshallah, we will probably invite you for a bedah buku session so that we can also understand your thoughts about that, but also if I'm going to emphasize the challenge that you threw us out to become the junior Malik Badri. So let this be a challenge to all of us here, regardless of our area of expertise. That also, inshallah, since we also have a lot of the administrators here, that we will work together to give rise in the university of more junior Malik Badri that will become better, inshallah, altogether. Okay, so thank you again, Dato. Now, the dilemma, we go to the next speaker now, but let me, I actually do not introduce the speakers because I feel that you are all so much well-known in your own right, but just linking it to the Festschrift, the dilemma of Muslim psychologists would be among the work that introduced Almarhum Prof. Malik Badri to the wider audience. I think, including to myself, and I believe also to the next speaker. One of the terms that he used to describe the dilemma is the lizard hole, which was actually in a title of his paper published before the dilemma book. It is partly about trailblazing in sense if you think about it. So let's hear from the Rector of IIUM himself, Tan Sri Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, who together with the President are trying to get all of us here out of our own lizard hole. Is there a twist though? Let's listen to Tan Sri Zul and try to understand what he means by the other lizard hole. Tafadhal, Shukran. That's right.
Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Thank you, Lihanna, Dato, Daud, Professor Emeritus Kamal, Hassan, Professor Shukran, brothers and sisters. Like Dato Daud, if Dato Daud feel he's not ready to talk about Malik Badri, I am even worse. I'm not a Islamic scholar. I do not speak Arabic and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I also do not meet him in person, except for that one moment when he came, maybe last 2 years, when he wanted to join the IIM again, or IIUM again. Yeah, we had a very passionate discussion. I knew the man from that moment, although I've read his book on the psychology when I was a student. But meeting him in person is another experience in itself, right? But I want just to cut this story short, because the discussion that we had with him was on 2 levels. One is about how to make IIUM the way he says it, right? And the other one is a book that he talked about, and this is where he introduced the word the lizard holes, coming, I think, from the hadith of the Prophet, in a way that if you follow somebody just blindly, you may end up in a lizard hole that you probably do not understand. So he's talking in the word of psychology, and I do appreciate and understand where he's coming from, because psychology, to my mind, I'm sorry, Lihanna, if I got it wrong, it's not a science per se. It is very much a conjecture. It's very much opinionated, and I think we have got also the same role to play in trying to reshape what we call psychology within the understanding of the Muslim perspective, the Muslim Ummah, and in Muslim worldview. And this is what he has done. And he has moved us, quote unquote, from the so-called lizard hole that we have gone into. I was, to a certain extent, a neuroscience student, and I do understand where neuroscience takes us. In terms of its conjecture. For example, if you talk about the brain, the way when I was a student, the brain was just likened to a kind of a tank of water, and then later on it moves into a computer, and then later on it moves. So in other words, the whole idea of what psychology is just depends on how you understand the brain. And if you don't understand the brain well, then you may be ending up somewhere else. Yeah. And yes, as a Muslim, it is not the brain, it's also the heart at the same time. And how do this thing comes together to develop another body of knowledge? And I guess this is where we need to put our cognitive interpretation, the way Daud put it. And this is where I think the challenge is, because we are, quote unquote, rather weak in that particular area. We do not encourage debates. We do not encourage dissents. We are always a yes man. We nod our heads all the time. And then we suddenly found that we are in a lizard hole. So I guess Malik Badri, in that particular sense, has awakened us, has given us that courage to question, even knowledge established as it is. Again, I agree with Dato Daud. There is no end to knowledge. It evolves all the time. And it takes courage for us to question whether the knowledge we have today is the end point, or do we need to move on. And this is where I thought the topic, the other lizard hole, coming out from the discussion with him, is something that I would want to share with you. And in fact, we have agreed to kind of introspectively look at the new lizard hole that I am worried about. I'm being a scientist per se, I have a lot of questions to ask when we talk about science itself. Is science a new lizard hole? There's a book now by, I think, Peter Sheldrake, that talks about the new dogma of science. In other words, science of yesteryears are no longer the science of today. Science of today is something else, has opened different views and different windows. And alhamdulillah, those views and those windows are exactly what Islam is trying to say. In other words, science has moved into what they call the post-material science, where we begin to talk about consciousness, where we begin to talk about spirituality, where we begin to talk about intuition. All these are not measurable the way we do science in the lab, yeah. But yet science are beginning to recognize this. And if Muslims do not put their input in this, then we are going to be led into another way of measuring all this stuff, and we will then be ending up in a lizard hole. But what is clear to me is basically when we talk about technology, technology is a new lizard hole that I am going to talk about maybe in a few minutes. I'm not anti-technology to start off with. Yeah, otherwise I will not be speaking to you using this platform. Yeah, we'll be probably shouting across the world to make myself heard. I am pro-technology in the sense, yeah, but I'm not 100% convinced that the technology is the solution of today. The way it is crafted, the way it is sold to us, the way it is made to believe. I think the recent examples of COVID tells us there's still a lot of deficiency in technology, the way we understand it. The last article I read, it talks about, I shared this with Norbit and our IT friends, it talks about it says, most virtual reality is, quote unquote, sorry for this word, is bullshit. I passed this article to Norbit because he knows this better than I do. But the substance of the article is not about the technology per se. It is about how technology later on has been manipulated to make in such a way that it becomes the solution of tomorrow. All right? So when he talks about virtual technology, certainly virtual technology is an important technology that allows us to imagine things that we cannot imagine. Yeah, the three-dimensional thing, the perspective, whatever else that virtual technology can offer, that can give us new solutions by imagining new situation, and therefore put us right up front in terms of finding a better way forward, right? But what this article basically says, this kind of technology will eventually be hijacked by the industry. It'll be turned into a passive sort of a mechanism to actually distract us from finding new solutions. And this is what I see, what the handphones is all about. A handphone certainly is a powerful thing, but half of us, maybe majority of us, are just distracted by the handphone for whatever reason there is that gives us no good purpose why we need to use the handphone. The question of social media, which I'm very critical about. Yeah, there are many things, even this university are involved in social media that do not bring benefit to us. We use social media to slight people. We use social media to demean people. We use social media for all the negative intention rather than a positive intention. And this author says the same thing. Virtual reality later on will become the opium of us, that we become so entangled with the virtual reality that we forgot what life is all about. In other words, we forgot what real life is all about. We are taken up by this virtual world that we forgot who we are, we forgot what we are supposed to do, and in fact, we forgot our own existence, as it were. And this, I think, this is a threat that is now coming on, especially for the younger generation that are just beginning to search and look for their identity. Before they can even read the Quran, before they can even say Bismillah, they are already good at using IT in the way they know how. You know, even my own granddaughter, when I gave her a book, she tried to flick the handbook, thinking that this is another gadget. You know, rather than flipping the page, she's so used to this, and the book does not move, and she got very frustrated over it. And these are issues that I think that we are beginning to see how this technology makes us what we are not. We are losing our humanity. We are losing our sense of being human. We are losing our humanitarian values against something that actually do not have its own use for us, right? So I'm coming to this, and this is what we discussed with the late professor, and he agrees with me that the next things that we need to understand is to understand what technology is all about. We are not saying that technology is good, but it has its own purpose, and its own purpose is what we are now trying to get into. Now, why do I say this? If I can share some slides, because some of the ideas that I have here probably will not be as easily understood. So the new lizard hole, to my mind, is this technology. Okay, I hope you can see that. Yeah, we all talk about the new norms. Everybody wants to get adjusted to the new norms, but we forgot there's also these new norms. If you are not careful, will lead you to this new lizard hole. All right. Now the lizard hole, I'm sure you all know. Yeah, if you look into the lizard hole, it is something like that. Sometimes a very small hole that we stay and we spend our time in. We thought that is the whole world. And the moment we get out of the world here, we become a little bit, threatened, because we see the world outside is so different from the world that we are so used to. Yeah, the world is small, the world is dark, the world offers very little new vision. Right. So the moment we moved out, we find we are threatened, and the moment we are threatened, we do not want to change. We do not want to get in touch. We want to run back into the lizard hole that we are used to. That is one dimension that I will talk to you a little bit later. Yeah. But what the dimension that I'm worried about, that many people do not discuss when they talk about technology, it is this whole idea called singularity. We talk about technology a lot, particularly the 4IR. Alhamdulillah, I'm now in the council of the 4IR, chaired by the Prime Minister, and I'm trying to sell them this idea. We talk about technology. Technology has got an idea that at the end of the day, we will go through a period called the singularity. The singularity is when the human intellect, which is the yellow, the turquoise line, interact with the green line, which is the human, what you call the machine intelligence, the AI, whatever you want to call it, right? At that point, when it interacts, we will produce another subspecies called the transhuman. Now, here it says in 2015, about this time, the machine power will surpass the brain power of a mouse. In other words, the brain of the machine is better than the brain of the mouse. Yep. But by the year 2045, we talk about Vision 2040, Lihanna, yeah? But 5 years after that, our vision may not be useful anymore, because by the year 45, the machine power will surpass the brain power equivalent of all the human brains combined. That is the prediction of the singularity. So we arrive at 2040. 5 years after that, do you find that there is another subspecies called a transhuman? And I don't think we talk about transhuman in our 2040 vision. Already, if this happens, that whole vision is out of date. This is the issue that I want to bring forth. Beyond 2045, with singularity come on board, we will be out of date. We have to contend with another idea of a transhuman. Some people call it a post-human. Some people call it meta-human, depending on who you talk to. And these are the people who will then, quote unquote, control the world, because the combination of this machine is better than the whole human brain combined. Now, this may be a science fiction to you, but the more you read about it, you are convinced that technology is taking us into this realm. There's already a book called The Spiritual Machine. We talk about spirituality. There's another book called The Spiritual Machine that also talks about that machine can be spiritually endowed. They may talk a different dimension, but what I'm asking is that by the time we engage ourselves with this new machine and its understanding of spirituality, can we win the argument with them? Yeah, and that is why we talk about humanizing education. And that's why we talk about humanizing technology, because we need to build this cognitive idea of what technology will be in the future, which is not too far away, 25 years from now, are you willing or are you able to grapple with this issue? Can you Islamize machine at that particular point? These are the questions that I am worried about, although we talk about this today, but I think the impact of it is not even felt the way it is now. All right? So singularity is a concept that is now being developed, and I met a number of them. When I was invited for the Nobel Laureate Dialogue in 2015 in Stockholm, I met a number of them, and these are Nobel laureates who says that singularity is possible. We are on the march to singularity. And in fact, one of the person that I met already pronouncing him that I am a transhuman. Embedded in his body is Bluetooth. He doesn't have to have Bluetooth in his machine anymore. He can command Bluetooth just on his own self without a machine accompanying him. He takes 200 tablets a month, or maybe a day, I'm not too sure, I forgot the numbers. And I asked him why, because he says, I want to live long enough to see singularity coming on board. These are the people who are convinced that their science will shape the world. What are the Muslims thinking? Where are the Muslims in this argument? How many of the Muslims are Nobel laureates that can engage these people cognitively? Are we still caught in our lizard hole? As a question that I asked Professor Badri, and we do not have answers to this question. It is really a hard question for you to think about. What does it mean now? As we follow this technology from its beginning right to now, yeah, and most of you will understand this, at the end of the day, it will say it will lead to a singularity, the same diagram that I showed you, and in 2045, surpass brain power equivalent to that of all human brains combined. All right, so we've moved from agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, light bulbs, moon landing, and on so on, so on, so forth. Finally, we will end up in this idea of singularity, and whether we are aware of it, whether we can argue about it, let alone minimize it, is a question that we need to ask now. It's a question that we need to think about it now. It's a question that we actually need to develop the expertise now. And this is what I am worried about. We are so busy with this technology, we do not know where this technology will end up, whether we will end up in the same way it is predicted today is something that I'm worried about. Already, when you talk about AI, already the world is protesting that the larger AI will be what they call the white AI. The white AI are the algorithms that is written by the people who are white in color. As much as we talk about the people of color, the people of, the white male dominant sort of paradigm will be writing the AI. And this AI will be passed on to us. Most people, including me, do not understand what is the merits of that AI. How much of the white value being put it, if I were to be more blunt, how much of the non-Muslim values are put into this that will make decisions for us that we do not know in a very subtle way that is already been embedded. All right? And these are issues that will then lead us into colonization, a different way of colonization, in a very subtle way, using technology that we are not familiar with, putting us into the lizard hole that they think we belong to. So my issue on this is very clear. I'm reading about it a little bit more so that I can understand and also now put some alertness within myself, within my family, and for those who else wants to listen to this. Yeah, this is a lizard hole that I'm worried about, called the singularity. Now, if you think this is just another worry, there's already books on it. Yeah, the humanist reader, the transhumanist reader, classical contemporary essay on science, technology, and philosophy of the human future. What is the human future? To them is a transhumanist. And to add on to this, there is now a transhumanist party in the United States of America. The people who are very, very much into the understanding of what transhumans is are developing another frontier, the political frontier, that will bring this idea of transhumanism forward. We already got problem with transgender. Yeah, now we're going to have a whole problem with the human man itself. And these are books that I'm sure our library do not have, and I'm sure most of us are not familiar with, but these are books that will influence the way technology will move forward. If the Muslim minds are still in crisis, the way our second rector talks about. I liked his words. He says, don't blame the technology, blame yourself, because you are not ready when the technology is there. You cannot stop technology moving. The technology moves, but are you moving in tandem with the technology, or are you the master of technology, or are you the slaves of technology? My take is today, we are the slaves of technology. We cannot master technology because technology has taken a life of their own. That, brothers and sisters, will be our new lizard hole. If you are not sure, if you are not careful, we will end up 25 years from now when the singularity takes shape as far as that is concerned. So my question to you is, what will you choose? If you just Google the word transhumanist in the computer, you will see their discourse. And what is their discourse? One of the discourses says the transhumanists are more powerful than God. They say we will control the world. There is no more room for religion. There's no more room for anything that has nothing to do with technology. That is a very bold statement made by this group of people who are now shaping the future the way they understand it, using technology as a tool to move forward. So while we celebrate technology, I say not that I say we don't use technology, but do we understand technology? Just as much as when you use psychology or Freudian or whatever it is, do you understand that psychology? If you don't, then let's understand it before we make a decision to move in one way or another. If we can stop it, let us stop it. If we can change the course, let's change the course. But it needs another way of thinking. If we are preoccupied in our own lizard hole, the way I see it today, that we resist change, where you do not want to see anything that threatens our own lizard hole, then I think we're going to end up into another lizard hole. The choice is very limited, and the choice is actually up to us. Being an IIUM in the last 2 years, I see there is a lot of talent in this university, but the talent needs courage to move. The talent needs courage to say no when we need to say no. And the talent needs to build its own foundation to create another vista, and this is what we are trying to do. And I've just mentioned to you that vista in the year 2045, if you are not clear, will be entirely new vista. So in other words, moving beyond 2045 will be another big debate for us. Whatever we plan today may happen or may not happen, and chances are it may not happen if we hang our hopes on just technology alone and nothing else. So I will stop there. I hope I have given you some inputs of what our discussion is with the late Malik Badri, how I wish he's still alive so that he can write this book, another opus magnum of his, to change our direction into another way of looking at it, moving from the second lizard hole, the new lizard hole, as it were. So as we talk about the new norms, be careful, the new norms could be your new lizard hole, as it were, as far as technology is concerned. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much, Lihanna, for this opportunity. And thank you very much for listening. I hope I make sense. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Tan Sri. So if technology is going to take over our lives, if we forget what real life is all about, what is the role of psychology and psychologists and other social scientists in a world of transhumans? Are we ready? How can we learn from Prof. Malik's writings to help us face this challenge and to avoid falling into yet another lizard hole? That is what we will continue to discuss, inshallah, as a department, as a university. Okay. Thank you again, Tan Sri.
Pleasure.
Okay, we move on to the next speaker and to the next talk. Prof. Malik Badri continued to work until his passing last February. He was 89. And I would attest, having been blessed to visit him late last year, he was still very cognitively alert and active. We learned a lot from that. It was supposed to be a social visit, but we learned a lot of the Shukran and Dr. Marjana and me. Such is the character of a Murabbi. And such is also the character of someone who considered himself to be Prof. Malik's Murabbi, who we in turn consider our Murabbi, Professor Emeritus and Sri Dr. Muhammad Kamal Hassan. How hardworking is Prof. Kamal? Right now, he is chairing a national level meeting at the Lembaga Pendidikan Islam, an inadvertent double booking on his part, to which he apologized. But his commitment is such that last night he has made a recording of his talk, and I would like to record my appreciation to OCAP and the KCA teams for going all the way to Bangi to record the talk. So let's hear from Prof. Kamal. Professor Malik Badri, my Murshid, my Murabbi, my Guru.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-'aliyyil 'azim. Our Honorable Datuk Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, President of the International Islamic University Malaysia, Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of IIUM, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean of the Kulliyah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences, respected IIUM Management Committee members, Associate Professor Dr. Lihanna Borhan, who is the moderator for this program, deans, directors, and staff of IIUM, participants, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, by His grace and mercy, I'm able to join this program on Festschrift in honor of Almarhum Professor Malik Badri. I wish to mention at the outset that as far as the issue of the right or the wrong way of understanding knowledge, producing it, developing it, constructing it, and utilizing it is concerned, Professor Malik Badri was my 20th century and 21st century Sheikh and Guru. Al-Quran al-Kareem, of course, is my first and last Mahaguru. And the beloved Messenger of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is my permanent spiritual guide, whose intercession or shafa'ah I look forward to on the Day of Judgment. Let me now share with you several reasons why I considered him as my Sheikh and Guru until he, rahimahullah, returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the 8th of February 2012. Number one, his paper, I would say this is the first paper that he presented in the US. His paper entitled Muslim Psychologists in the Lizard's Hole, which he presented at the annual conference of American Association of Muslim Social Scientists, which was formed in 1972, of which I was a member, and I remember attending the conference 3 times, and I presented a paper in 1977. This conference was held in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, and the paper had a powerful impact on the audience. It shook them intellectually and emotionally. It also ignited my intellectual imagination as never before and sparked my fledgling interest in the new intellectual discourse on Islamicization of social sciences, which Almarhum Professor Ismail Al-Faruqi and AMSS were dedicated to. Now, the metaphor of the lizard's hole was most apt because it was used by the Prophet ﷺ in his foreboding prophecy that in the future Muslims were going to blindly emulate the ways and lives of the Jews and Christians to the point that they would follow them even if they got themselves into a lizard's hole. His widely distributed and best-known book, The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists, was an expanded form of his lizard's hole paper. But to me, the paper and the book were the most convincing treatise I had ever read following the book of Professor Ismail Al-Faruqi, Islamization of Knowledge, General Principles and Work Plan, which was published in 1982, on the negative impact of secularized Western social sciences and humanities, which also developed in tandem with the colonization agenda of European colonialism, which was deconstructed and masterly analyzed and exposed by Dr. Edward Said in his classic and masterpiece Orientalism in 1978. Professor Malik Badri's other works, especially on contemplation and Islamic psycho-spiritual study, an excellent psychological penetration and extrapolation into the rich Islamic religio-spiritual legacy, has also had a great spiritual and intellectual influence on my intellectual growth. His latest book, which I have yet to see in Arabic, on the emotional dimension in the lives of prophets and messengers, which is an important psycho-spiritual study and interpretation of prophetic emotional intelligence, would be most useful for me as his murid if I could get my hands on it soon, inshallah, because he told me a couple of times a decade ago that he would be working at the end of his life on this very, very important research project. His translation and commentary on Abu Zaid al-Balqi's Sustenance of the Soul, the cognitive behavior therapy of a 9th century physician, radically changed the date of the origins and the originator of modern psychology to a Muslim physician of the 9th century, 1,000 years ago, in the person of Abu Zaid al-Balqi. The second reason, on the subject of the origin and the intellectual discourse of Islamicization of human knowledge, a subject that became contentious for some Muslim scholars, most unfortunately, I am most grateful to Almarhum Prof. Malik for informing me that among the earliest Muslim scholars to initiate the intellectual task of Islamicization of human knowledge coming from outside of Muslim civilization was Al-Imam Al-Ghazali, who died 910 years ago. I told him that in the modern period, I thought it was Muhammad Iqbal and then Abul Ala Maududi who were the first to raise the alarm. In the case of Iqbal, that the scientific and technological knowledge of the modern secular West needed to be Islamicized. And this he made it clear in his letter which he wrote to the Minister of Education at that time. Otherwise, it could become a tool for evil purposes. In fact, he used the word, satanic instrument. And in the case of Abul Ala Maududi, he came up with his writings in 1945-60 on the need to develop the worldview, social sciences, and education for Muslim societies based on the norms and values of Islam and not on secularism, materialism, or atheism. When I look into the writings of Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, especially his Maqasid al-Falasifa, the objectives of the philosophers, Tahafud al-Falasifa, incoherence of the philosophers, and his monumental magnum opus, Ihya Ulumuddin, revival of the religious sciences, I agreed with him that not only Al-Ghazali took up the task of understanding, analyzing, mastering, filtering, adapting Greek philosophy, and rejecting some of its theological premises using the criterion of Islam and divine revelation and reason, he showed the proper way. He showed the proper way to Islamicize knowledge coming from outside of Islamic civilization, namely that one needs to understand fully and objectively the alien sciences before one embarks on critique, deconstruction, or refutation of the intellectually constructed knowledge or disciplines. And I think we need to follow the method laid down by Imam Al-Ghazali. His refutation, as we know, of Greek philosophy did not mean that he rejected the whole corpus of Greek philosophy. In fact, philosophy became a very important tool for thinking and arriving at wisdom. But there were some theories and assumptions which went against the doctrines of Tawheed, and he had to highlight those negative elements in philosophy. And similarly, when we do Islamicization of human knowledge, it does not mean that we are going to reject the product of human knowledge. We will reject only that which is not ma'ruf, which is munkar, which goes against the teachings of Islam and its theology. Of course, Al-Ghazali did not use the term Islamization of human knowledge or Islamiyatul Ma'arif al-Bashariyya, that is Islamization of human sciences, or At-Ta'sil al-Islami lil-Ulum, or Islamic indigenization of the sciences. What more, the terms de-Westernization or indigenization or desecularization of human sciences. These are modern or contemporary labels or slogans which whose subject matter and the epistemic mission are as old as Islam, namely the responsibility of human beings as Allah's servants, vicegerents, and believers to transform Jahiliyyah or positivist human cultures and civilizations built upon false beliefs, knowledge, and values. These have to be rebuilt, reconstructed according to the framework or parameters of Tawheed. Therefore, the production, construction, development, and utilization of human knowledge must be in accordance with the purposes, the vision and mission, principles and values of the Creator, the ruler, the sustainer, and the judge of mankind. It is for this reason that the contemporary Egyptian Islamic scholar, Dr. Muhammad Aymara, calls Islamiyatul al-Ma'rifah a new slogan for an ancient cause. شعار جديد لمضمون قديم. This you can read in إسلامية المعرفة ماذا تعني. My Sheikh and Guru, as one of the pioneering contemporary Islamizer of human sciences, added another label to the Islamicization of knowledge discourse, and he used the term de-kufrization of human knowledge. Thanks to his original scholarly work, dedication, guidance, and direction in his intellectual and spiritual jihad with hundreds of students and disciples around the world, the discipline of Islamic psychology or psychology from the paradigm of Tawheed is growing faster than some other social science disciplines in Muslim countries. He was very concerned about the negative psychological and moral impacts of COVID-19 pandemic when it started, and he proposed, and at that time he was talking in Turkey, that Islamic universities such as IIUM establish centers or units to manage, handle, and assist the potentially exponential increase in cases of mental ailments or cases of psycho-spiritual depressions as a result of the pandemic. And we are facing that problem now in many countries and also in Western countries. The third and last reason why I consider Prof. Malik as my Sheikh and Guru was his unenviable personality and spiritually charged character, following the character of the beloved Messenger of Allah. The humility, the sincerity, the integrity, the transparency, the brotherly and fatherly manner he treats his colleagues and students. He was the embodiment of the true Murabbi, the caring, nurturing, and loving molder of the embodiment of the true and Murshid. Ever ready to help, ever smiling, ever optimistic, never saying no. His was a 7-day week, 24/7, with no vacations, no Sundays. He was a model Sufi sheikh without claiming to be one, who did not miss his tahajjud prayers, his regular nightly vigils of dhikr or munajat with his beloved and compassionate master. He was indeed a true living model of the Quranic ulul albab personality, that is the personality of people possessing sound, healthy, pure and intuitive intellects. I consider myself privileged and fortunate to have him as my intellectual, spiritual icon. And IIUM was fortunate indeed to have him as one of the great Islamic scholars to have taught in IIUM to help strengthen the department in its Islamicization efforts, and to have left behind his priceless legacy of Quranic and Sunnatic-driven scholarship and aura, which will live on for years to come. I do hope that his students and disciples from IIUM will accelerate the development of the Tawhidic school and paradigm of psychology in the Muslim world, just as Islamic finance and also non-Muslim countries, just as Islamic finance and banking are becoming promising bodies of contemporary social sciences in Western universities. I recall with sadness my sense of desperation in 1990s in the Kulliyah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. At that time, I was the founding dean of the Kulliyah, when the Department of Psychology for several years was run and managed without the wisdom, the experience, the scholarship, and the personality of scholars like Almarhum Malik Badri. Then when our Sheikh joined us in the Gombak campus, although it was several years after the department was formed, it was a great day for the university and the department. But I have learned that the presence of the eminent and highly respected Islamic scholar of psychology in a faculty or a department does not mean that this discipline will be automatically transformed and that the scholars and the academics would be Islamicized. We know that it will take some time for the younger academics in the social sciences of the humanity or the humanities who have obtained the higher degrees in Western or non-Western institutions to liberate themselves or assert their own perspectives in opposition to the secularized or un-Islamic schools of thought, theories and paradigms they had been working under and directed by the non-Muslim gurus or supervisors. Professor Malik Badri came across such challenges in the Department of Psychology, but he was hopeful that when these young and not so young scholars who remain loyal to the secular conventional knowledge perspectives would eventually realize that they have been learning from the lizard's hole. They would want to discover and benefit from the perennial truths about human beings, about human societies and human behavior from the paradigm of Tawheed, after having studied and learned from the paradigms of materialism or naturalism or positivism, humanism, rationalism, and so on. The sooner these Muslim scholars read the works of Prof. Malik Badri, the better it is for them, because psychology is a fundamental and vital foundation of the social and human sciences. The sooner we know the truths of human nature, behavior, and development as they ought to be from the compassionate creator, sustainer, and ruler of Homo sapiens himself, the closer we get to finding the correct solutions to the global crisis and the global social facade, corruption, decay, mischief, rottenness in human society today. If we Muslim scholars in this Islamic international university fail to build the alternative body of social, psychological, and cultural knowledge, that scholars like Al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, Malik bin Nabi, Abdullah Darraz, Muhammad Iqbal, Abul Ala Maududi, Muhammad Al-Mubarak, Ismail Al-Faruqi, Roger Garodi, Abdul Wahab Al-Masiri, Muhammad Aymara, Muhammad Nasir, Buya Hamka, Syed Hussein Al-Attas, Engku Aziz, and others, the global civilization may be forced to live under the soulless, inhuman regime that the Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari envisages in his American bestseller as Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. That was last night. So I think at least the one take-home lesson that we can take from this is, at least for us in the Department of Psychology, we have been working on the soul of psychology, the book on Muslim scholars, traditional Muslim scholars. So I think that should be made a priority now. That is a challenge that has been thrown to us by all the past three speakers. Okay, so what challenge now are we going to get from the fourth speaker? Well, inshallah, we already have a junior Malik Badri working in our midst who has both an intellectual and personal relationship with Almarhum, just like our previous speaker, Prof. Kamal. As both alumni and data staff, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman embodies the mission and vision of the university. Hence, I am proud to call on him to present the next paper titled The Attribute of Zamalah in Professor Malik Badri. Tafadhal mashkur.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa luqadatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. Thank you Dr. Lihanna, the moderator. Datuk Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, our president of the International Islamic University Malaysia, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Dzulkifli Abdul Razak, our rector, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Kamal Hassan, the third rector, respected IIUM University Management, Dean Directors, staff, academics of the IIUM, participants, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. and a very good morning to all of you. I feel so very small here, especially when I have to talk before my three gurus as well, Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, Professor Kamal Hassan, and Tan Sri Zul. We have been listening to expectations, we have been listening to also wasiyat of Professor Malik Badri through the three previous speakers. And I think my sharing this morning will go a bit different, because we have been listening to the macro level analysis, meso level analysis. I would like to go micro here, being a student who have been under his tutelage for about 30 years, right? So coming from psychological assessment, background, organizational psychology, I have chosen to talk about his characteristic. This title Zamalah, Deconstruct Zamalah, came to my mind when I was requested to design, or when I was asked to, pen a topic for the title of discussion this morning. It was when I was working with my students in identifying a local or emic related construct, right? And I think this is my attempt, to put a traits term to Almarhum Professor Malik Badri's characteristics. Okay, so I'll be talking about the concept of Zamalah, how I wish to define it. And in the definition, I've included three important components or domains. And I would like to also share some behaviors or sample of behaviors of Almarhum Professor Malik Badri's, which reflect that notion or that construct Zamalah, which is one of his many attributes actually. Now, as a scholar, Professor Malik Badri is the center of attention, a center of reference to many, to students in the university, to students in other universities as well, and what more among academics. The student academics come from all over the world, right? So especially from the university that he served, especially in IIUM. In this university, being his student and his junior colleague, the relationship that we have with him was not only related to the content of work or the content of duties, but the context that we are in with him together. So stated another way, the kind of relationship that Professor Malik provided went beyond student-teacher or went beyond senior-junior relationship, a condition which reflects an attribute in his personality traits. So he has many positive personality traits, and I tend to only talk about one of his many positive personality traits. What is Zamalah? I was inspired by a talk by Professor Dr. Osama As-Sayyid Mahmoud Al-Azhari in the year 2012, when I served as a rapporteur in a conference on Muslim Vice Chancellor University Forum that was organized by Tan Sri Zul when he was the Vice Chancellor of USM. Okay? So according to Professor Osama, Zamalah is an important quality, important cornerstone in a higher learning institution. Some universities use the term Zamalah to refer to financial scholarship or academic fellow scheme that is used in Malaysian university as well. It is a close relationship, okay? In our definition today, we want to use the term Zamalah to refer to close relationship which is developed between students and teacher based on shared interest or based on shared specialization between him and young scholars, between him and his students. Zamalah refers to a concept through which academic members nurture learning or develop scholarship among his students, or transfer knowledge to his students, to his juniors in a rather personalized manner. Like I mentioned just now, it's not only about the content of knowledge, but the context where they operate as well. It involves flourishing interaction between lecturers and students. This relationship enables students and lecturers to accumulate experiences that are contributive to the pedagogy and methodology of the knowledge that they learn. This has been the practice in Al-Azhar, according to Professor Osama, throughout many generations. So through this relationship, lecturers or professors read, discuss, verify, and even assess students' learning on subject matters in formal setting as well as informal settings. And this is what we experience with Almarhum Professor Malik Badri, okay, throughout our tutelage or student relationship with him, throughout our 30 years with him. Okay. In this university, in IIUM, we learn and we teach the contribution of scholars to the development of psychology, including the contribution of Muslim scholars. And this is what we learned from Professor Malik Badri as well. In the subject history and philosophy of psychology, okay, we learn the epistemology, the ontology, and axiology of psychology as contributed by the scholars that we learn. We do not only learn the Western scholars, but we also studied the contribution of Muslim scholars, okay, towards understanding human being or human characteristics. Now, with regard to the values of the axiology, the notion of axiology, we discuss aspects which are related to values, encompassing the values that a scholar upholds, or the values or the valuable practices that the scholar introduces. It is important for us to learn the values as they tell us the kind of values that the scholar upholds and how the values serve as the ground for the work the scholar conducted or discussed. So an important notion when we study the contribution of a scholar towards the development of psychology is the scholar himself, the scholar as the bearer of certain values. So in this case, okay, I would like to study the value manifested by Professor Malik Badri, right? So the presentation that I am going to share with you this morning, okay, will focus on an important intrinsic value of Professor Malik Badri, which are manifested in his praiseworthy behaviors. And that value will be discussed using one traits term, which I try to share with you, which is Zamalah. Hopefully I can receive comment as well before we improve this paper and publish in the Festschrift that Dr. Lihanna will be editing. Now, what I did was I went to look at the population of behaviors, or the many behaviors that Professor Malik Badri have shown to us. And I have categorized them into three, which are the cognitive aspects, the affective aspect, and the behavioral aspects. So what I could see from the classification on cognitive aspects are, Professor Malik Badri has put his effort to transfer knowledge to us in a personalized manner, hence nurture the flourishing state in the students or in the academics who deal with him, right? So indirectly, we feel that we have been developed by him. In classes, we listen to his lecture. Outside the class, we are inspired. We have been inspired by his thought, by his thinking processes, by his sharing of cases that he had handled before. So that developed our knowledge aspect. Affective component-wise, he has shown to us his tender loving care inside classes and outside classes, hence providing motivation to us, whether we are students or academics, okay, to work harder, okay, in this field, okay, in this field of psychology. Behavioral-wise, he has been nurturing us, he had nurtured us, okay, with good characters, and he has facilitated us through formal and informal approaches. So we learn a lot about good conduct. We have learned a lot on how to deal with people. And as academics, we have learned a lot on how to deal with our students through his great behaviors, through his exemplary behaviors. I've listed down some sample of his behaviors. Out of many behaviors that reflect his effort to transfer knowledge in personalized manner. Okay? As a result, okay, he developed flourishing state in us, students and academics, okay, towards what should be done, okay, in our effort to advance psychology or to Islamize psychology for that matter. He has guided us to have the right mindset about the subjects he taught, substantiated by case history data. Okay, he used a lot of stories, cases that he handled, and he would link it with Quranic verses and hadith. And he's very good at this. He had helped us to understand Quranic verses. He had he had opened our mind, okay, to understand hadith in the context of current psychosocial issues. He has caused flourishing state in students as they experience positive psychosocial functioning upon learning from him. So we could relate, what we had heard from him to the context that we are operating now. Okay? He had developed our capacity or our ability to apply the knowledge that he had not only told us, but he has shown us as well. He had made students and colleagues think, had made us believe, he had made us see, do what we cannot do without his inspiration. He had been critical. He is a critical person, right, in his thinking without upsetting the student's view or work, right? So he is a critical person, or he is critical in his thinking, right, without upsetting or without, belittling, the work of his students when we submitted to him our work. He has guided us in related fields through not formal, although the students is not formally enrolled in his students. I still remember in our clinical psychology class when there was a medical doctor from, I think, Kuala Lumpur Hospital who wanted to learn from him about clinical psychology. He had guided others to be critical of ideas. Okay? He had told us that we Muslim psychologists must not just parrot, must not just borrow or use Western theories in our context. He guided us to look at the local context. He emphasized the needs to understand the local culture. And he has placed the need for us to check whether certain theories, certain practices and behaviors are suitable for use in the Muslim societies. He had right positioned his stand and his approach on Islamizing psychology, in that it is an effort to revise the knowledge so that the knowledge will be in line with Islamic teaching. He told us that Islamization is not an attempt to solely or to blindly reject any theory or concept invented in the West without properly perusing, okay, the benefit of the knowledge. He had reasoned out the essentiality of Islamization, underscoring the fact that psychology cannot be beneficial to Muslims unless it had been culturally adapted and Islamized by subjecting the psychology knowledge to its notion of philosophical core. And he has shown his high readiness to work with students, either to deliver talk, to author in any publication, or to co-author with his students even. So that is the first part, okay, the cognitive aspect in his what you call Zamalah relationship with students. The second part, which is affective aspects of his Zamalah, he had shown tender, loving care in informal and formal setting, hence providing motivation to us, right, when we interact with him. He had provided motivating statement to students, especially during difficult time and during challenging time, right? So there were moments when we were lost. There were moments when we felt frustrated, for example, and when we saw him, when we talked to him, he would give us, his motivating words, specifying thoughts, something like that. Attending to people who greet him in public space, especially at the airport. I've traveled with Professor Malik Badri to places, right? When I saw people, when I saw him, in the airport, he has been a center of attraction as well, because some people know him, and then they would go and greet him and ask questions to Professor Malik Badri, and he would leave his book, his laptop, and talk to the students or talk to the people who came to greet him, showing great hospitality to people whom he received at his office. I know that he had also received students, juniors, friends at home as well, and even to his home country. I have the privilege of visiting him in Sudan, meeting his family and his friends over there. And because of, I think, our relationship with him, we had received good hospitality by people in Sudan as well. Receiving people to meet him in the office, although without appointment. Right? Sometimes people walk in just to see him, right? For advisors, right? And he would receive them. Showing effective leadership by inspiring others to do good job and to be hardworking. He would write email or text to me and to my friends, okay, giving or leaving positive statement or motivating lines, so that we'll feel continuously inspired, okay, to deal or to encounter with whatever difficult job that we have to deal with. Consulting others, he also consult us. Right? I think he consult us not only because he want our opinion, but also to make us feel motivated, because he has shown his interest towards what we are doing. He has registered well wishes on students' work and make dua for their success. And he will do that even in public. On the stage, for example, he will make dua that we become better student, we become better person, and even to be better than him, something like that. He had honored and adored young knowledge speakers. Young knowledge seekers. He adored young knowledge seekers, and he has said this to my student, right? He had given advice to students who came or who went to see him. Has shown exemplary roles to young scholars, and he's being missed by students as well. So I have actually quoted some of his students' note or message in the Facebook and in email that they shared with me as well. Right? Dr. Latif, who was his students at the master's and PhD level, has said this: I'll miss him very much, okay, because of his kindness and his dedication in his teaching. He's being treated like father by students, the kind of teachers and student relationship should have. So we wish that we can be like him as well, right? He addressed his students as son or grandson, being the source of pride among his students. His students will quote his words or will cite him when they have to give lecture, something like that. He is also being humble to his students, to his juniors, despite the high level of knowledge and experience that he already has. Being a loving teacher, like I said just now, he called his students with loving names, like my sons and my daughters. He gives moral support and guidance to juniors. He is also being assertive on issues that require certain attention. He doesn't always please us. At times he was also assertive, but he had put that assertiveness in a very polite manner. These are samples of, notice that he had shared with us, message that he had sent us through email and even through text messages. The last one, nurturing and facilitating learning through formal and informal approaches, right? So this is what we could see from his behaviors, right? He had nurtured learning. Okay, he had always wanted us to learn, like Dr. Lihanna mentioned just now. Even, in our last meeting with him at his place, he still taught us, or we gathered a lot from him as well. He had the willingness and had the readiness to meet or to attend classes or talk even at early morning. I know that Professor Malik Badri would spend his time during morning time to write, Okay, but there were times when I invited him to my 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning class, and he would say yes to that, and he came, okay, even earlier than the students came, right? Sharing own and others' experience that are contributive to the pedagogy and methodology of learning. Who would share stories? We have to be very attentive to his stories, because in his stories, we learn a lot of values. Okay, all right, so this is something that we miss a lot from him. Facilitating learning by reading together with his students, discuss a subject matter with his students, right? And some students even went to his place to learn more about he had started in classes. Giving respect to students, to academics, even though they are not from psychology discipline. He has been referred to by the community, them wanting him to give advice or to give views. I remember there was a PG student from another university who walked into the Department of Psychology wanting to see him, because this group of PG students had problem with their children, especially when the children refused to talk to them after some time. So these PG students were busy with their PhD work, so much so that they bought a gadget for their children. And then eventually they found it was difficult for them to detach their children from the gadget, so much so that they needed Professor Badri's help, okay, in telling them what to do with the children. Sponsoring his students to learn the ropes in the field, such as by introducing his students to his network. He had introduced me to his circle of scholars. I have met many new friends. I've learned from many new scholars, okay, after being introduced by Professor Malik Badri in many countries, actually. And he has been attentive to other people who came with his students. He would not only give attention to us, but to our spouse, to our children, to our friend who came together with us when we went to see him. Right, so he had the ability to think and plan for the future, like Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan mentioned just now. Last year, we had invited him to talk about the role of psychologists in this pandemic, and has given his prediction that, you know, when this COVID-19 is over, we will have to deal with many mental health issues, and had prepared us on what to do. He has listed down from training to services that we have to undertake, being, you know, a university which offers a psychology program. Right, so he has futuristic big picture, and then he proposed plan, okay, for us to lead other people in getting there. He emphasized the relationship with the Creator and accept all that he has destined for us. He has also emphasized the need to improve, the need to change the inner nature of human beings, spiritually and morally, in order to succeed in the present world and in the hereafter as well. He nurtured us to learn the need to Islamize psychology in order to make the knowledge be of help to Muslims and other people. He had made us learning invaluable lessons from his talk, from his lecture. And this has enabled us to understand the field better and correct what we had learned from other places. Alhamdulillah. In conclusion, a period of 30 years tutelage under Professor Malik has provided us with enormous extent of knowledge and allowed many of us to observe a vast population of praiseworthy productive behaviors in him. Those behaviors are essential reference and benchmark for scholars like us to emulate and to improve ourselves, so as to be at least close to his attributes of Zamalah, the attribute of Murabbi, who edifies knowledge seekers with strong moral values. Now, being a psychologist teaching psychological assessment, okay, I wish to use the methods of developing personality inventory to use the axiological analysis that I have conducted, okay, to develop a scale that I can use to measure my Zamalah attribute, especially when I deal with my students and my juniors. Right, so this is what I have actually come up with, right? A scale that I will be using to check why I stand in my Zamalah my Zamalah attribute, so that I can at least be close to what Professor Malik Badri has shown to me. May the characteristics that we deliberated in this Festschrift session here will be considered as Professor Malik's amal soleh, and the example of behaviors that he manifested would serve as our reference that will also return to him as beneficial knowledge that he leaves for us. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa'afi wa'afu anhu. With that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Shukran. Well, I see that, this paper that you're going to expound, okay, we look forward to reading the full paper so that we can promote it as a must read for all academics, especially as we work to implement the Sejahtera academic framework, inshallah. Okay, right. We are at the end of our program. Beneficial ilm is one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ said is a continuous source of benefit after our death. We can see from this talk and the various other talks that have been held in his honor by other parties how much we have benefited and will continue to benefit, inshallah, from Prof. Malik's ilm. May Allah grant him Jannah. This is the end of the program, but not the end of his legacy. Far from it. As mentioned earlier, a book will be published out of this talk. So fair warning, yeah. Speakers, inshallah, within a month, we'll get the full text. But in addition to the talks that we have heard today, we would like to include short articles of 2 to 3 pages from others who are interested. So please register your interest with the department. This is open to everybody, not just the departmental members. The other things that were raised in this forum, I hope the department will take up the mantle. But Prof. Malik Badri's thoughts transcend the field of psychology. So we would welcome efforts from others too. Let's work in tandem, if not hand in hand. Let's work in tandem. I thank everybody once again, those who join us via Zoom, and those who join us via YouTube, and also the university website, and those who would be watching the recordings, inshallah, for being with us. I also want to thank the panelists once again, Datuk Dr. Daud, Tan Sri Zul, Professor Kamal, Professor Shukran, for the insightful thoughts and challenges thrown our way. Okay, let's not forget those challenges and let's pick up on those challenges. We make dua for your continued health so that we will continue to learn and benefit directly from your wisdom, all 4 of you. I want to thank in advance people who will work together with the department and also the university in materializing Almarhum Prof. Malik Badri's legacy, inshallah. We will have a photo shoot after this in a bit, but let me first invite Brother Syed Ahmad Mujahir Al-Ahadat once again to recite the closing dua.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu wa amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Sadaqallahul azim.
Right. So we have reached the end, but we would like to do the photo shoot. So I hand this over to the technical team, inshallah, to guide us through the photo shoot. Still have our president here, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Dato.
Okay. I would like to request everyone to turn on their camera, please. Okay. Let's wait. In 3, 2, 1. Once again. 3, 2, 1. Okay, done. Pass to you, Dr. Lihanna.
Okay, all right then. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.